1965. And he fulfills the order of his Guru Maharaj given in December of 1936. That was the last letter that Prabhupada received from Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur disappeared 3 weeks later on December 31st, 1936. So Prabhupada reprinted the letter that he received in his first Back to Godhead of 1944. So just recently we celebrated Prabhupada's first arrival. So I'll just read what Prabhupada quoted from the letter from his Guru Maharaj that was printed in the Back to Godhead. So Prabhupada first writes, "It may not be out of place to mention herein that His Divine Grace Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada, just before his departure from this mortal world, wrote me a letter from Puri, dated the 3rd of December 1936, directing me towards my duty in fulfilling his mission in the world for propagating the religion of his divine love as propounded by Lord Chaitanya. In course of writing that letter, he wrote the following lines, amongst other things." So Bhaktisiddhanta writes, "I am fully confident that you can explain in English our thoughts and arguments to the people who are not conversant with the languages of other members. This will do much good to yourself as well as your audience. I have every hope that you can turn yourself a very good English preacher if you serve the mission to inculcate the novel impression to the people in general and philosophers of modern age and religiosity." So that was the quote. And then Prabhupada says, "And when I was consulting my well-wishers and friends who are able to help me in this great adventure, all of them encouraged me in this connection." And that was printed in Back to Godhead in 1944. So we just celebrated on September 18th that anniversary. So we finished last week with the August letters of 1967. And the real point of those letters, as well as all the letters, is the realization that all of the devotees, whether they be in San Francisco or New York, had very little contact with Srila Prabhupada, at most a few months only. And then he goes to India for his Ayurvedic treatment for 6 months, and still the movement carries on. And the question is why? Why we would, as young people, devote our lives to a mission, to a person we didn't even know hardly. And the main reason is love. For some reason, I can speak for myself, whenever one met Srila Prabhupada, he automatically wanted to help in Prabhupada's mission. There was something inside your heart that told you you must drop everything and devote your life to Srila Prabhupada. I don't know what it was, something mystical. Who knows what it was? But it was based on love. You wanted to do something for Prabhupada. Otherwise, how can you explain that we only knew Prabhupada for a few months, 2, 3 months of association, and yet we wanted to devote our lives to his mission, to his philosophy of preaching all over the world. So it has to be based on the concept of spiritual love, not material love. And that is basically what Prabhupada was teaching us, how to love, but through love of Godhead, not love of body. And that is the one thing we have to remember when we think about the early devotees of 1966 and 67, that they worked very tirelessly based on the feeling of love of Srila Prabhupada. Otherwise, there's no other explanation why we would do such a thing. And Prabhupada was teaching a very conservative philosophy to a bunch of hippies who were not conservative. I mean, we broke every regulative principle that you could think of. We broke every rule and regulation of Vaishnavism, and yet we were attracted to Srila Prabhupada. We wanted to serve him. We wanted to serve his mission. We wanted to please him. So why? I always ask myself why, and the answer can only be based on love. We had genuine love for Prabhupada, and that's why the movement spread so rapidly, because the whole movement was based on bhakti to Srila Prabhupada. Although he was teaching us love of Krishna, that was his message. But we were thinking love of Prabhupada, you see. So that is the sum and substance of the reason why we continued to serve Prabhupada, even though he wasn't physically with us for 6 months. In fact, the movement expanded. When Prabhupada left for India, there were 3 centers. There was New York, San Francisco, and Montreal. And when he came back, there were 6 centers. There was added on was Los Angeles, started by Dayananda and Nandarani. And then there was New Mexico, started by Subal and some of the San Francisco devotees. And then there was Boston, started by Satsarup, along with Jodharani, who was married to Satsarup. So the movement was actually expanding, and it was all based on love of Srila Prabhupada. That's the only explanation, because we weren't Vedantists. We had no knowledge of anything. But what we did know, we wanted to help Srila Prabhupada's mission. We wanted to drop everything in our lives, even our family, everything. I stopped even seeing, I think I saw my mother only once, and yet she donated her 2 sons to Prabhupada. She was the first mother to meet Srila Prabhupada. I think I had a photograph of her someplace. Anyway, she was the first mother to meet Srila Prabhupada and actually literally donate her 2 sons to Srila Prabhupada for his service. So that's unique because she lost both of her sons. We had very little contact after that happened. We were mostly serving Srila Prabhupada, and we forgot about all family attachments. And Prabhupada admitted to us, me and Brahmananda, that that's the reason why we joined Krishna conscious, that we had no family attachments. And that's the one reason why Prabhupada was not successful in India, because of the family attachment. And that's why he left India. He tried in Jhansi. Jhansi was his first preaching center. He had a nice property there. And he had many students, mostly Sanskrit students, coming to see him and listening to his lectures. Or Prabhupada himself, in a conversation, admitted he was first in his class in Sanskrit during his college days. And he was also first in his class in English essay writing, to the extent that the teacher publicly recognized Prabhupada as being a very good writer, even in his college days. So we will continue with the letters from September. I have them here, of 1967. So that's, if Prabhupada arrived in September of 65, it's now 2 years that Prabhupada is in America, although he did leave for India for 6 months. So the first letter is September 15th, 1967. Now the last letter was from August of 29. So that means 2 weeks that Prabhupada didn't write to Brahmananda, because Prabhupada was very busy doing many programs with Kirtananda, because that's the first time that the Indian people saw a white sadhu. They had never seen that before. Prabhupada gave us the nickname of dancing white elephants, because it was very unique to see a white sadhu dressed in Vaishnava dress. And this was a great shock to the Indians. They couldn't believe it, that we would follow the 4 regulative principles when the West was known for wine, sex, rock and roll, everything. So Prabhupada was doing programs in Delhi and in Vrindavan. So the first letter is to Brahmananda on the 15th of September. So on arrival in Delhi, I received a letter, and I request you to take proper care of Gargamuni. Let him take complete rest in the hospital and give him rock candy as advised above. For a diseased person suffering from jaundice, rock candy will be just appreciated as soon as he regains health. The original taste will be appreciated. Somehow or other, I contacted jaundice, where your eyes turn yellow, your skin turn yellow. It's a prelude to hepatitis. So how did I get that? Well, the doctor said we didn't wash our dishes properly, which is probably true. When we ate, we didn't use hot water, because at 26 Second Avenue, the water heater for heating the water for the building, the whole building, was only turned on for about an hour a day. And so most of the water that we used to wash the dishes was cold. We didn't have a washing machine. It was all done by hand, and men are not very good at cleanliness in cleaning dishes. So the doctor said I probably caught it from dirty dishes. They weren't clean because our prasadam cooked in ghee is very greasy. and you have to use a lot of soap, and we weren't using a lot of soap to clean them properly. So Prabhupada gave that I have to use this rock candy, which is we could only get from the Oriental grocery called Kalyustan's. It was an Arab grocery, and they had this rock sugar candy. And Prabhupada said I had to always keep it in my mouth, and that's the only cure for jaundice. As soon as it is so, the patient is understood to be cured. When you take if you have jaundice and take the sugar candy, it tastes bitter, not sweet. So when it does become tasting sweet, then you're cured of jaundice. Regarding money, you can deposit in my savings account. There is a balance in my favor. And as soon as it is 100, I shall request them to transfer 100 to my Indian account. That was for Prabhupada's maintenance. Each center would send in $10. So there were 6 centers. So when that amount reached $100, then Prabhupada would transfer the money to his account so he could utilize it in India. Harsharani Dasi writes that she's enclosed $10, but unfortunately I don't find it. A lot of devotees were sending $10 bills in the mail, but the mailmen in India were stealing it. That was very popular in those days. It wasn't just one time or 2 times, but many devotees were sending cash money and they would steal it, the mailmen. Somehow they were able to open the letter and seal it again, probably using steam heat. You can open the letter and then put glue and reseal it. It is therefore risky to send bills like that. The best thing is to deposit bank checks in my above account as I have instructed, so there'll be no misdelivery. I understand from San Francisco that they have sent you $20 for my maintenance in India, so advise them to send them from all centers. And he puts there 6 centers. When he left, there's only 3. Now there's 6. I said there was the added ones were Los Angeles, Santa Fe, and Boston. That LA was Nandarani and Dayananda, Santa Fe was Subal, and Boston was Satsvarup and Jodharani.
New York, Boston?
No. The first 3 centers was started by Prabhupada when he was in America. It was New York, San Francisco, and Montreal. You then deposit checks in my account, and on hearing from you, I shall do the needful. Please advise them not to send money via mail. It is very risky. Tears for Krishna is as good as associating. Along that letter ends abruptly from the Veda base, so some of the letter is missing. I don't know why. So during that date of this letter to Brahmananda, there was other letters written, which I copied so we could see what Prabhupada was thinking. And he wrote a letter to Janaki on the 16th of September. Janaki was Mukunda's wife from San Francisco. So Prabhupada mentioned to her, tears for Krishna is as good as associating with him personally. In the spiritual world, separation is more valuable than meeting. So your feelings and tears of Krishna consciousness will make you more enriched in spiritual advancement. Now, this is a totally new concept of love. We think love is when the person is with you, but Prabhupada's teaching a new concept of love on the spiritual level, that the love is more intense when you are separated from your lover. You think of the person more. Prabhupada uses the example of a housewife who has a lover. When she does her chores, she's always thinking of her lover, but she does her chores perfectly so the husband won't suspect that she has a lover. But in her mind, she's thinking of her lover, but she does her chores perfectly. So the intense feeling of love is more in separation than when you meet the Lord. So Prabhupada is teaching this concept to us very early in the movement. Actually, Prabhupada's whole teaching is how to love. We don't know how to love because we're on the bodily conscious. We love the body, and the body we know is made of earth, is dead. It's earth, fire, water, ether, and air. So we love dead things. We love the body, which is dead. So we have no concept of spiritual love. And Prabhupada is teaching us that, how to love on the spiritual level. So that's why I copied this, because this is a totally new concept that he's teaching us as far back as 1967. So at this time, September 16th, Prabhupada also wrote a letter at the time of Brahmananda's letter to Jayananda in San Francisco. And Prabhupada writes to Jayananda, when you drive your car, you always chant Hare Krishna. And Jayananda was a taxi cab driver. So he was always driving Prabhupada around in San Francisco to different programs. And Prabhupada noticed when you drive your car around, you're always chanting Hare Krishna. And when I was by your side, I could understand how heartily you have accepted the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. Krishna is very kind to all, but he is especially kind to his sincere devotees. Krishna is always with us, within our hearts, and he's always ready to give us direction. But because everyone is independent, Krishna responds cooperatively. Anyone who voluntarily cooperates with Krishna's desire, he responds to his call very eagerly. So this is another concept. Prabhupada is preaching through the letters. So although Prabhupada admitted in a conversation that he himself, he first met his Guru Maharaj in 1922, he was initiated in 1933, and he knew his Guru Maharaj from physically present up to 1936, almost 1937. So in those years, Prabhupada admitted that he only had at most 10 days association with his Guru Maharaj. That's all. 10 days. That's 15 years. But he only had association at most of 10 days. That's an approximation. So we don't really understand spiritual love, or we don't understand Krishna, the personality. And Prabhupada is teaching us not only Krishna, the personality, and how he responds to his devotee, but how we should respond to Krishna. So these are all new concepts, and it's all through letters. There were no books. There were no books. There was no Bhagavad Gita. There was only the Srimad Bhagavatam, but Prabhupada sold almost all of those. For the first year he was in America when he arrived in September of 65. So from September 65 to September 67, he only had 200 sets, and he sold them all to bookstores and to some devotees. So there were no books. So all the preaching was done through word of mouth and through letters. And still we were attracted to Prabhupada, even though we had no books. So that's the power of transcendental sound vibration. It is so powerful that it affects the spirit soul in each and every one of us by hearing the transcendental sound. And this is the proof. So the next letter to Brahmananda didn't come until September 22, 1967. My dear Brahmananda, I'm due receipt of your letters of the 16th and 2nd of September. So Prabhupada didn't, this is the 2nd of September and the 16th. Prabhupada was actually using his Delhi address, but he wasn't only in Delhi, he was in Vrindavan. And if he received his letter in Vrindavan, that was a very small village. And it would take a lot of time before Prabhupada would receive letters. And he was also very busy doing programs and showing off his first disciple of Kirtananda to all his Indian friends in Vrindavan. As you are all feeling my separation, similarly, I'm also anxious to return as soon as possible. I think I am fit to go back to your country at present, and as scheduled previously, I am sure by the end of October. Prabhupada was ready to return, but he was engaged in preaching. He brought the record with him that we had made in 1966 with a portable record player, and was playing the records to all his friends, which they all loved. So Prabhupada was engaged in a lot of preaching activities, and that's why he didn't return. And he didn't come in October. He came at the end of December of 67. I had gone to San Francisco in October of 67, thinking that he was coming there. So I was waiting for him in San Francisco also for him to return. I must be fit to return, but before there are many things to be done. I am not yet assured of the permanent visa. Prabhupada didn't want to get another tourist visa because you had to keep renewing it, and he didn't know how much time he would get to renew the visa each time because it was a tourist visa. Prabhupada wanted a permanent residential visa. The best thing will be that from each center an invitation should be sent that my presence is urgently required. So he wanted each center to send a letter inviting Prabhupada that he is our spiritual guide and we required his physical presence, and that would help him to get his permanent visa. No, he had to get a visa from the American Embassy in India. Regarding the American house, as I told you previously, I'm trying to get a nice house in Vrindavan, and unless I'm sure of that, I cannot advise anyone to come here incurring so much expenditure and undergoing so much trouble because there wasn't a proper place for Americans to live at that time. Students at Swami Ban Maharaj can come only if they are very much eager and serious about study. He has already given me a letter that 10 students can be accommodated with food and rooms. Well, in those days, you get the bare minimum. You know, it wasn't like a hotel. There wasn't any beds. You had to sleep on the floor, and there were snakes in those days. So, actually, nobody did come, and nobody wanted to stay at Swami Ban. They wanted to be with Prabhupada, so nobody actually came except for Achyutananda, who came 2 weeks after Prabhupada arrived. Because Kirtananda was made sannyas, and he was supposed to go back to America and preach. So, students at Swami Maharaj can come only if they're very much eager and serious about study. He has already given me a letter that 10 students can be accommodated with food and rooms. In this connection, Achyutananda wishes to submit a report by practical experience. He had arrived on September 1st in India. Presently, I'm very much anxious to begin printing here if Macmillan Company does not take up the work. There was a lot of bureaucracy dealing with Macmillan in printing the Bhagavad Gita. First of all, the Bhagavad Gita wasn't ready. The full version was still being edited. That was 800 pages. But they didn't want that. They wanted a condensed version. So it practically had to be rewritten, leaving out so many purports of Srila Prabhupada's. So it had to be reduced to about 250 pages. So that takes a lot of time. And Prabhupada was impatient because he wanted to print. At least while he was in India before America, he printed 4 books. From 1962, 64, and 65, he printed 4 books on his own. And here he has all his students helping him, and not one book has come. So he was very impatient to get the publishing started, even if he had to do it himself in India. Please let me know yes or no from Macmillan if they are serious or not, that immediately send the manuscripts, finished or not, to the following address. And he gives the address. After dispatching, let me know and I shall do the needful. If possible, I think you should personally go to Washington and see Mr. Nehru for my permanent visa. If my permanent visa is made, then I shall be very happy to return. Mr. Nehru didn't have anything to do with the visa. That's with the American embassy. He could give a letter recommending Prabhupada to get a permanent visa. That would be very important. Please arrange for this by all means. Please take up the matter seriously as it can be effective. Mr. Ypsilanti, he's the immigration lawyer. We were paying him up to $500 to help get Prabhupada a permanent visa. Has simply taken money. It is so hard to get a sincere lawyer. Prabhupada called lawyers liars. He never referred to the name lawyer. He said, yes, liars. Because that's all they do is lie to you to get money from you. They exploit you. To summarize the whole thing, I beg to state that the following items are most important, and he lists them. 1. Permanent visa. 2. Final decision of Macmillan. And 3. Kirtananda has already gone back this morning. I have given him an introductory letter to London. Why London? There was a Gaudiya Math Center there that was started in 1932. It was run by a lady called Miss Botwell. So Prabhupada gave a letter of introduction for Kirtananda for Miss Botwell. In this connection, much money have been spent from the building fund. If he gets a favorable response, then Ray Rama may join him there, and when he goes, then I shall go. I think I'm now fit to travel, and Krishna will give me strength. I'm glad to hear that Gargamuni is out of the hospital and things are going nicely. Hope you are well, you're ever well, as your A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Prabhupada was always concerned for his students, for their health, because he knew that we were undergoing a physical change. We were meat eaters, and now we were becoming vegetarians, so we would become weak from just eating vegetables. We would lose strength. From meat eater, you eat heartily, you get muscles, you feel strong, and now we're changing our whole diet from a non-meat diet to vegetables. So at first you get weak, and you're always hungry. I used to eat like 10 chapatis at one time in those days. And they were big chapatis. And they were thick. In those days, you couldn't get atta. There's a difference between atta and whole wheat flour. Whole wheat flour in America, you bought it with all the husks within the flour. So it's good for making bread, but it's very bad for making chapatis. It doesn't expand. It doesn't blow up, and they're not soft. They're very coarse and hard and thick. They were more like bread. Yes?
After Kirtananda left with Prabhupada, who did the cooking at 2679?
I think it was Rohini Kumar. We were still cooking in Prabhupada's room in his apartment. Or Rishi Kumar, I think it was Rishi Kumar. He became a treasurer because I left. So I taught him how to do the treasury work because I went to San Francisco. I wanted to meet Prabhupada in San Francisco. So when Prabhupada writes NB, it means note back. He would write on the back, usually in his own handwriting. I requested the monthly subscription of $10 from each center may be deposited in my account in New York. When it is $100, then I shall have it here by instruction. Kindly let me know if it has been done now. We were always delinquent in sending the maintenance money because we didn't have any money. You know, $10 was a lot of money for us in those days. Especially, I think I mentioned, our subject was mostly potatoes or cabbage. We never had cauliflower or eggplant or Brussels sprouts. We didn't have those for lunch. We couldn't afford it. We had potatoes and cabbage mostly. And then in the summertime, we would eat the watermelon rind. You've seen watermelon, and the green part you throw away and you eat the red part. Well, we didn't throw away the green part. We cut it up and cooked it as a sabji. And that was our sabji because it was cheap. So Prabhupada writes, he says, I have now received only 10, so only Satsvarupa was sending $10. The other temples weren't sending. So at this time, this letter was written on the 22nd. So on September 20th, Prabhupada wrote to Dayananda and Nandarani and Uddhava. And he writes about himself, whatever improvement is made in the matter of my health, it is all due to the warm climate. So that's what Prabhupada needed, was the heat. Because even if you know, I showed the film of Prabhupada recuperating in New Jersey, and you see that's in June, and he's wearing a heavy coat. And we were just wearing t-shirts because we were used to the cold climate. Prabhupada wasn't used to the cold climate. And so whatever, how he felt was due to the warm climate in India, which was in August, September. So it's still hot as we are experiencing right now. It's October and it's 35 degrees outside, which is in the 90 degrees Fahrenheit. As such, I shall be pleased to know about Los Angeles, with special reference to the climate conditions. Los Angeles matched the weather of New Delhi. And when I was in LA, it was like they had their own monsoon. Usually there was sun the whole year except for the winter time was when the rainy season would come. But during the whole rest of the year, it was always sunshine. You see, very little cloudy weather. And it was like Delhi's weather. So Prabhupada was very interested in Los Angeles. In fact, mostly in later times, when he went to America, he would make Los Angeles his headquarters. That became the first headquarters of ISKCON, Los Angeles. Encouragement to the dead souls in the Western countries is to inform them that God is not dead. This is a very nice pun. In America, in Time magazine, which was the #1 magazine in those days, it said, "Is God dead?" That was the title. That was the theory, that God is dead, but Prabhupada is calling that all the souls in America are dead. Not God, but the souls are dead because they don't know who is God. So Prabhupada is making a pun here. He's calling all the people dead souls. That God is not dead, you're dead. So I thought that was very interesting. God is not only alive, but also we can go and live with him face to face. The tilaks on the forehead and other parts of the body are symbolic representations of Radha Krishna temples. In other words, by making tilaks on all parts of our body, we become protected by the Lord from all sides. Besides, tilak marking at once makes one known as a Vaishnava. Therefore, they are necessary as much as the beads. So apparently, Nandarani Dayananda were asking about tilak, because in those days we didn't have tilak. There was no clay. We had to go to the art store and get fuller's earth, which is used by sculptures to fill in cracks. But sometimes, most of the time, they were running out of fuller's earth because we were buying it all. And you would use that as tilak. It was the same color as tilak. So Prabhupada, he introduced water tilak. You could use water instead of tilak because there was no mud around for using. So that was written to Dayananda and Nandarani at the same time as Brahmananda. So the third letter to Brahmananda came a day later. We read from September 22nd. Another letter comes September 23rd. Prabhupada writes, "My dear Brahmananda, please accept my blessings. I have not heard from you since a long time. I hope everything is going on nicely. I think the Macmillan transaction is not successful because of the bureaucracy and because we had to rewrite the whole book again. And that takes a lot of time. But Prabhupada wanted a book published. I explained to you, while Prabhupada was in India himself alone, he published 4 books in 62, 64, and 65. And here he's been in America for 2 years, not 1 book. Only Back to Godhead. Please send 1 copy of the Gita Upanishad manuscript as instructed above. Let me begin the printing immediately as we have waited so much time." And Prabhupada had the money. He had the 5,000 from Jayananda. He used part of that for his airline tickets. And he had the 5,000 from me and Brahmananda that we gave. So Prabhupada had the money. He wanted to print. Let me begin the printing immediately as we have waited so much time. I am now fit to return back, but I shall be glad to return with permanent visa. In other words, Prabhupada didn't want to come back until he got the permanent residential visa so he could stay. I am going to Calcutta to visit Lord Chaitanya's birthplace, and next letter may be addressed, and he gives the address. If you have collected the contributions from different centers, you can pay Achyutananda's mother $88. This amount was taken from him on account of Kirtananda's ticket. Kirtananda should return to you $20, which he took from me on the plea of stopping at London. I am feeling too much for his disobedience. Well, this is the first time that a student was disobedient, because Kirtananda didn't stop in London, and he just went on to USA, and he disappeared. Nobody knew where he was. We saw him when he came to the New York temple, and he was dressed in a Catholic priest's suit, just like a Catholic priest. He went crazy. Prabhupada said he went insane, and Prabhupada got him out of Bellevue, which was a mental hospital in New York, and Prabhupada said he should go back there again because he was wearing a Catholic priest suit with the collar. I mean, just like he was a Catholic priest. He looked like that, except he had an addition. He had a cape, a black cape, that he swung around his body. So I gave him the nickname of Count Dracula. He didn't like that. So Prabhupada signed his name ACB. Then Prabhupada, at this time, he writes a letter on September 23rd, the same day he wrote Brahmananda. He writes to Ray Rama, who's in New York. Yesterday morning, I sent Kirtananda to London with a letter of introduction to Miss Botwell, Botel of the Gaudiya Math. I hope this lady, who is supposed to be a Gaudiya Vaishnava, will receive him well there, and there is possibility to start a center there. When they went there in 1933, the Gaudiya Math sannyasis didn't do Sankirtan like we did Sankirtan. They simply stayed in their room and talked about Radha Krishna Leela, attracting a few class of people, high class people, and they would sit around and speculate. They were bhajananandis. The Gaudiya Math has always been bhajananandis, not Ghostianandis. We were trained as Sankirtan, going out to the public, and that's what Prabhupada started in America. And that emulated Lord Chaitanya. Prabhupada was following Lord Chaitanya's movement of going to the public and chanting in public, not sitting in a room and talking about Radha Krishna Leela and the gopis, you see. But that's what the Gaudiya Math was doing, and they've always done that because they didn't know how to preach, and they didn't know what to preach about. So there was possibility of starting a center, but actually there was no possibility because we were totally differently trained. You were to start for London by the beginning of November. If Miss Botwell gives us her cooperation and Kirtananda is successful in this mission, you will reach there timely. And on receipt of a favorable report, myself and Achyutananda may also go. So Ray Rama was supposed to go to London if that happened. But it didn't happen because Kirtananda never went to London. He went straight back to New York, and then we never heard from him for at least a few weeks until he showed up at the New York temple dressed in a Catholic priest suit.
Why did that happen to Kirtananda?
Well, I think he was a little bit crazy because when he went to Bellevue, he was thinking of getting crazy money for Prabhupada. You know, in those days, if you acted crazy, you could get money from the state. So Kirtan was thinking, I could act crazy and then get money and give it to Prabhupada. But when he went to be diagnosed, they said, you are crazy. And he didn't count on that. And they actually committed him to a mental hospital, the doctors. So we had to try and get him out of the hospital. So it was due to Allen Ginsberg that we got Kirtananda out of the hospital. So apparently the doctors thought he was a little crazy. And by wearing that priest suit, he was crazy. And Prabhupada said he should go back to Bellevue. He wrote in a letter.
Wasn't he trying to write the draft?
No, he was too old for that. He was in his 20s. He had polio. They weren't taking people with polio. He had a limp. When he was a little boy, he had polio, and he wasn't able to walk properly. He walked like he had to move his leg like in a circle in order to walk.
We had heard that he went to the draft office dressed as a, shaved head.
No, he never went to the draft.
Huh? Yes, that's that one. Yeah, that's what it says.
No, that's wrong.
So he went to Bellevue on his own?
Yeah, he went there to get crazy money. Because in those days, the government would give you money. It's called nowadays SS something or yeah. You can get $500-600 a month if you're crazy. you know, of course you have to get a doctor to say that. So he thought he could do that. But when they diagnosed him, they said, you are crazy and you can't go in public. So they committed him. So it was very difficult to get him out.
Get money.
No. So about on the same day, September 23rd, Prabhupada wrote to Satsvaru, please send a letter of invitation stating my presence is urgently required in the States. This will help enormously in obtaining my permanent visa. I must produce concrete evidence of the necessity of my presence in America for this visa. So this is the most important part. Prabhupada didn't want to return to America until he got the proper visa. But he actually didn't get it. He had to go on a tourist visa again. And that created a lot of problems, which happened in the future. The next letter was written to Hansaduda, and that was on September 23rd also, to Himavati. It was written to his wife Himavati. She was pregnant. Your baby will be the first baby born in Krishna conscious family in America. So you must be very careful for him while he's in the womb. Actually, she did have a miscarriage. In Srimad Bhagavatam, the environment of a child in the womb is described by Narada Muni as a very awful place. And after 9 months, when the child has developed its body and consciousness to some degree, the entrapped soul, I mean, Prabhupada calls pregnancy an entrapped soul. We glorify pregnancy. Actually, Prabhupada also said in future letters, a woman is most beautiful when she's pregnant with child. She's lustrous because she's having a child. So after 9 months, when the child has developed its body and consciousness to some degree, the entrapped soul begs to Lord Krishna to set me free and promises in this life he will be a devotee. At that time, the baby is allowed to be born. But unfortunately, during the Kali Yuga, as soon as the child is come out of the womb, he is in 90% of the cases, he is not given any facility to further its Krishna consciousness. However, in your case, Krishna has shown this soul great mercy. The Bhagavad also says that no one should become the parent unless he can deliver the child from the clutches of death. So it is your duty to make this baby Krishna conscious so that he may not have to take birth again. My advice for the present is that during your time of pregnancy, you should eat very simple foods. Hot or spicy foods are not to be taken, and also sexual relations are forbidden. Prabhupada said when the woman is pregnancy, there should be no sex for 16 months while the baby is developing in the womb. 16 months. That's why in Vedic culture you're allowed more than one wife. All blessings to Hansaduda and yourself. So at this time, October 27th, Prabhupada wrote to Harigriva, who was working on the Bhagavad Gita, rewriting it to be published by Macmillan. And Prabhupada writes Harigriva, I have arranged everything for the printing, so you will kindly arrange to send me one copy of the manuscript without delay, finished or unfinished. Whatever is to be done further in this connection, I shall manage to do it personally, and also fill up the missing stanzas of the 9th chapter. Please therefore send it immediately. One copy must remain there. You need not send the manuscript altogether, but send them part by part as they are finished. I hope you will follow this instruction. So Prabhupada was really bent on printing the Bhagavad Gita. He had waited too long. The negotiations for Macmillan started in the winter of '66. And now we're what? We're in September of '67 and still no book. Although Brahmananda was given the license by Prabhupada to sign all the contracts, but still there's no book. And it actually didn't come out until the winter of '68. So that's almost like winter '66, '67, '68. That's 2 or 3 years it took. But that's how publishers work. It's a lot of bureaucracy. And also the manuscript wasn't ready. I hope you will follow the instruction. Kirtananda Swami prearranged with you to reach on the 24th of instant, but he has arranged here with me that he would stop at London, and I gave him one important introduction letter. Although he had in his mind not to stop at London, and yet promised before me that he would go. He lied to Srila Prabhupada. That's a serious offense, for which I gave him an extra $20. I cannot understand why he played with me like this. Prabhupada was in shock, you see, because this is the first time a student disobeyed him and actually lied. Nobody had ever done this before. We had so much respect for Prabhupada. I cannot understand why he played with me like this. If he had no desire to go to London, he would have plainly told me like that. It has certainly given me a great shock. Prabhupada was in shock. He is one of the very faithful disciples, and if he does not like that, how can I prosecute my programs? I've received one postcard from him from London Airport in which he writes that he's going directly to New York. I understand also from Umapati's letter that he has already reached New York, although I have not heard anything from him from New York. It is all my misfortune. Just see. Prabhupada's blaming himself. He's so humble. So humble. He's blaming it's his misfortune, not Kirtananda's misfortune. Just see how the pure devotee protects his disciple in all circumstances. Even though we do bad things, Prabhupada takes it upon himself that it's his misfortune, not Kirtananda's. Just see the nature of a pure devotee. Yeah, it's 12 o'clock. I think we're finished anyway. We're still in September. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada, all glories to the assembled devotees. I hope we're learning something from these history letters and how Prabhupada dealt with his students who were not very advanced in Krishna consciousness. Haribol. Yeah, there's cookie prasadam today.